What is up, everybody, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we are once again talking about the Vulp Pro. Big shocker, I know. You guys, crazy that I'd be talking about that more than once. Yeah, so I want to talk about the Vulp Pro, but today I want to not just talk about the Vulp Pro, I want to talk about why the Vulp Pro exists and how I made it. So this is going to be a bit more than your average, breakdown of the design. I really want to go in and explain to you guys how I came up with this design and stuff like that. So if you don't know, I use Adobe Illustrator to create my base designs. So when I'm actually going in to create something to then send to 3D modeling or whatever, Adobe Illustrator is fantastic because I can actually model in real physical space. So I can actually create an outline for something that is the correct size for that thing, which is very important, obviously, when you're working with people that you're modeling for or whatever. But before I even get into any of those software products, I actually like to start either on paper or on my phone. So I have a Galaxy S23 Ultra, which is very nice because it has the pen, and I've actually been using the S Pen a number of times. When I designed the original Vulp, I actually did it on paper. So somewhere there are actually sketches in a sketchbook of the original idea for this handle pattern and stuff like that, which I think is pretty cool. What I wanted to do was essentially take the essence of the Vulp and then redesign it from scratch to be better in basically every way. And that began, obviously, with the blade. So, by the way, today I might talk a little bit about the flipping, but I'm mainly going to be focusing on design aspects. This is going to be kind of different content than you would get anywhere else. This is more of a deep dive into the creation of this product rather than a review or anything that would end up on the main channel. So this is going to be different but very informative, hopefully. So initially, you can see I started with the blade. Obviously, these are the first prototypes of the Vulp Pro. They did not live up to expectations. Not even that I necessarily had expectations, but we didn't even know what we were doing at this point. I just thought, I think I can come up with a better, more refined blade shape that can, hopefully lead to a better flipping experience. That was just the initial starting point of that. And then I started to think about creating a pro version of the Vulp, and that's where we eventually got led into this. But this was that initial idea, and we played with some different processes for the handles, and you can see we added a little bit of texture here. That did end up getting brought over into the final product, and we'll talk about the side at a later point. But for now, I do want to talk about the blade. The blade being so different from the original Vulp blade. So here's a purple one to compare. I think that this is super duper important. What I've done is essentially refine the blade in a number of ways. This original blade was my first Balisong blade for something functional that I had designed. I've made designs before, but nothing that was actually going to go into production or whatever. And so this was my first this will be made design. When it comes to that, there were a few problems that I noticed, and this is some stuff that was pointed out by my friend Stitch Steel, and I think his input is really cool and important here. Some of the stuff he talked about was when it comes to grinds and the center line of your blade, right? So immediately, one of the things that Stitch pointed out to me that he noticed is the tip of the blade is very, very off from the direction that you might want it. So you can see you have this line that goes up, and then the line carries through straight that way, whereas the tip goes that way. And, you know, the tip can curve off into a direction, that's fine, but the tip isn't on that center line. And you don't have to have your tip on the center line. There are many, many blades that don't. However, you need to know the rules before you can break them, and I didn't really know the rules when I made this. So that center line, I wanted to create a more symmetrical design here. So even on this first prototype, the blade has stayed mostly the same. Because, as you can see, I updated that center line so that it goes through and actually goes from the base to the tip as a nice, like, continuous item. Also, I changed the size of these pockets, partially, as I talked about previously, to bring more tip weight into here. You know, you can see there's a lot more material on the blade edge as well as behind it. However, I also wanted to change the size of these because before, having the two opposing full-sized, you know, cavities was cool. But I think having these two cavities where they sort of oppose each other, one of them being much taller than the other one, I think it adds to the visual language. It creates more curves, you know, with the new blade. You know, with the previous blade, there was just kind of the major curve of the blade and then the sub-curve of the swedge. Whereas this one, what you've got going on is you've got the major curve of the blade, which is then enhanced by this secondary curve, which means that it goes from it goes from thin down near the base to thicker at the tip. So there's like two different curves that are following there, which is pretty cool. And then you have both the curve of the swedge, but also because of the two separate heights of the cutouts, you also enhance the look of the curve of the swedge. And so it's just a more immediately imposing, it's more imposing upon first glance, and if anything, it also is just more grown-up feeling to me. Similarly, you can see with Stitch's knives right here, you know, his blade, the tip here isn't lined up with the center, but that's because what Stitch has done is broken the rules in a way that he understands. You know, he understands the rules very deeply, and so what he's done is created something that has that sense of weight and flow, utilizing the various curves and grinds on this blade. Similarly, this guy, the tip actually does line up pretty well with the center. But you once again have that center swedge that sort of brings your eye to where you're going. You know, the swedge on, or not the center swedge, but just the center line. The center line brings your eye to the right place here, and it kind of does the same thing on the really well done blades. Whereas on the original Vulp, the center line just goes straight off and doesn't bring your eye anywhere. So I wanted to kind of enhance both the flipping experience, but also the design language of the blade itself. So I thought that would be really cool and kind of important. Alongside that, I talked about, obviously, we increased the size of the bottle opener just to make it a little more effective, though I will admit, if you get caught on it, you know, it's a little more punishing because more of your finger can fit in there, so it'll catch you. But then again, it's the Vulp Pro, so that's kind of the point. At the same time, you know, like you shouldn't be getting caught as easily with the Vulp Pro, maybe in the sense of like you should probably be a better flipper by that point. Also, you can see these original prototypes have terrible tolerances, but that's just because we didn't put these together to have good tolerances at all. It was not expected at this point. It was just a attempt being made. So yeah, the handles just didn't do it for me. I thought the stuff on the side was neat, but it didn't really do anything for me. But the blade, I was really happy with at this stage. I felt like we'd really done something great with that blade. And I essentially, the way that I made this blade was literally going in to Adobe Illustrator with my original file that I had used to create this blade, and then I just kind of edited it over time. So I started moving things around, adjusting different curves, trying to get things right, and trying to add material where I could and where I thought it needed it and stuff like that. So there was a lot of small tweaks and adjustments that happened, but it was all majorly in Adobe Illustrator for this blade because I was working with something I already had and then kind of modifying it into a brand new thing. And sure, it's very different now. If you like look at both of them side by side, they both have the essence of one another, but they are truly very different. This one still contains the bones of this one, and so that I thought was important. By the end of it, actually, it's funny, the only thing that actually stayed from this original one was the outline. I literally took the outline and then reshaped it into this shape, but it was the same outline. But these internal shapes I had to redo from scratch because the way that I did the shapes on this just wouldn't work here, and so I had to completely redo it and make new internal shapes. So anyways, that's the story of the blade, and thank you to Stitch for kind of helping me grow into my own a little bit more when it came to actually designing a blade that's aesthetically pleasing. All right, so then moving on from there, let's talk about the handles themselves, right? I think the handles are super important in this scenario because, like, that's truly what makes the Vulp Pro the Vulp Pro. There's a lot of different influences that sort of led to the handles that you see now. Obviously, the LDY Cygnus is a good example. I mean, with the integrated G10, I have to give credit where credit is due. But on top of that, the other things that inspired me are the Nibali's, Trident. Yeah, the Trident, and then the EPS Wraith, and then also, but only tangentially so, the Squid Nautilus. The Nautilus being the first aluminum with G10 scales on it. Those are some like basis points that I think kind of got me thinking of like, okay, so what if we did G10 on an aluminum channel design, but we did it different than anyone has ever done before? How could we implement that, and how could that be done in a way that is both aesthetically pleasing but also functionally like good? Weird thing that I'm just now noticing, for some reason this blade is magnetic. Why is this blade magnetic? Who knows? That's strange. Which blade is it this blade? Is this blade? This blade is magnetic. That's weird. I don't know why that's magnetic. Sorry, that's a random tangent. That's funny. So yeah, let's talk about the handle design. The handle design is very important. As I said, I had a lot of inspiration from those various sources, but I wanted to do something with it that was functional and useful, but new. One thing also, this is a quick aside, you'll notice the hardware is completely different. We have fully upgraded the hardware. It now has a T10 Torx bit on both sides, on the barrel and on the actual hardware, so it's just way higher quality hardware. For some reason, this one sample of Brandon's comes with everything except for one screw being wrong. I literally don't know what happened. Ironically, it has still perfect tolerances, which is great, but this came to us from Nibali's. This won't be this way for any of the final products. I just thought it was kind of funny that they just like ran out of the round black screws. I don't know. The golden black one is fine. It has all the normal screws, so I don't know what happened there. It's just kind of silly. But anyways, the handles went through a lot of changes for me. So let me pull up my phone here. I want to show you guys. This is the actual design document that I started with. So when I did this, when I started working on this project, is it gonna, okay, cool. I'm not gonna paint with my finger. That's good. I used my S Pen to create this. And what I started with is just this right here, right? I started with just what is the essence of the Vulp design. Because I wanted to kind of take the essence and then go somewhere with that. So you can see I started with the essence of the Vulp design, which I thought was, okay, so it's a line with these chevrons at the top and then this square at the bottom, and that's like the Vulp. So then I said, okay, well, let's play with some ideas. So I started thinking about like what could different inserts be that kind of like emulate that idea, and then that went back and forth into a number of different iterations until we ended up here, which is very close to the final version. You can see what I've got here is kind of similar to what we've got here. There was a few manufacturing limitations along with some later design changes, but you can see the idea of this final product coming into existence with this last thing. The reason that being able to do that on something like your phone or on paper or whatever is really important is it allows you to iterate and create new ideas. And you'll notice when I draw those things, I'm doing it from the beginning in like a long document. I'm doing it from concept to new concepts, and I'm not removing it as I go. I'm not like drawing on top of one thing and then redoing it over and over again or whatever. What I'm doing is I'm creating one concept, and then I'm moving on to the next concept, and I'm moving on to the next concept, and I keep the old concepts, because what that does is it allows you to iterate in a way that's productive. You know, you can look back and see, okay, what did I do wrong? Or maybe, that previous design didn't work, but this new design isn't working either. But what if I take this small element from that original design and mix it with my new design, and suddenly that works way more? And so that's how we ended up here. So originally I sent those concepts, and then I brought those sketches into Adobe Illustrator and then created the actual like 2-scale outline model of everything that I wanted with the Vulp. And so when it comes to the handles, the main thing was trying to keep the design language alive, right? You have the chevrons, you have that center line down the middle. I wanted to keep that center line, but I also wanted to address the issues with the previous Vulp. So I wanted to have a lot of grip, especially, these chevrons are in this area where I want you to have a lot of grip when it comes to fanning and doing ricochets and stuff like that. And you can see, even as I go, I'm holding it here like I'm trying to do something, and it just slides down through your fingers because there's no grip on the sides. The Vulp is very, very good for beginners, but it has its problems when it comes to being a higher tier flipper. And I've found myself, I'll flip my Vulp every once in a while, but I find myself less attracted to flipping this than I do some of my other things in my collection. Whereas now with the Vulp Pro, I find myself grabbing the Vulp Pro very intentionally a lot of the time, just because of how good it actually is to flip. So anyways, wanted to keep the design language alive. We have, this area is all about increasing the amount of grip there. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure that the aluminum didn't get too thin there, but I still wanted to have integrated, inserts for the Zen pins. I wanted the Zen pins to be press fit. I didn't want them to have Zen pin screws or anything like that. So we needed to make sure that there was still enough aluminum there. Also, you have the chevron pattern inside of the aluminum there, and I like the way that it's framed. It's just like a bit of the original Vulp sort of peeking through, and it doesn't do very much in terms of adding grip like it did on the original Vulp. Instead, it's much more stylistic here, but also you don't need extra grip in that spot because of the G10. The G10 just does an amazing job of feeling really nice. It's very nicely machined G10. It reminds me a lot of the Serpent Striker V3 that I have, which I love the G10 on that thing. And all of the G10 that we've gotten from Nibali's feels like it's the same quality, so I'm also very impressed with Nibali's ability to machine G10. But yeah, that's kind of what you've got going on there, is this this area to increase the amount of grip, and then alongside that we've brought it over and around to the other side, and this was a feature that I was really excited by. If you saw on the previous model I was showing you, there was a speed channel cut in, and then 3 lines right here, and that was like what some of the stuff that we had done to the side. Here, we still have those 3 lines and the speed channel, but I decided to make the speed channel just a divot instead of being an actual cut through, partially because of weight and partially because it actually made the sound worse, in my opinion. So it gives you the experience of a speed channel. I brought this up previously, similar to the Crackerakin. I think version 2.5 is where they introduced the little speed channel cutout sort of thing, and I love that idea. This one's wider, so it has a little bit more effect on the flipping. The Crackerakin one is very subtle, and it doesn't actually add that much grip, in my opinion. So this one's a little bit wider. It's a bit more of like a real divot that'll give you a bit more of that ladder grip in that spot. The other thing that's been done here, obviously, is that this and all previous Vulps were bead blasted, which is a much more slippery texture, whereas this one is all satin polished. You know, all of the new Vulp Pros are satin polished. So you just get a lot more grip going on generally because of that. So this wraparound design sort of came over time, back and forth with me iterating with Nibali's. We were trying to sort of come up with a way to increase the grip on this back area and have it be in a way that was unique, because that's one of my main goals with the Vulp Pro as well, was to really have it be a unique experience. You know, I wanted it to be unlike anything that had been made before, and I wanted it to have a reason to exist, you know, because, like, sure, there are plenty of $139 trainers on the market, you know, anything from $150 and below on Amazon. There's a bunch of great options, and I wanted this to not only be better than those options in terms of like its actual flippability, but I also wanted it to be appealing in a unique way. I wanted it to be genuinely new. And so I thought that this was a really exciting way of doing that. Sort of, it's just a very striking look, especially with the black G10, where the black G10 really does look almost seamless there, going around the side of the Balisong. It's like, God damn, is that not just really sexy? It does increase manufacturing costs a fair bit, but at the same time, I think it's worth it. I think it's really cool. I'm excited to see what people potentially do as they start to maybe mod these things. You know, this adds a new level of modability to this aluminum knife that just couldn't happen before. You know, it's very hard to anodize aluminum, but it's not that hard to take out G10 and then dye it. The only problem is that the G10 is fragile and it is difficult to remove. So I don't suggest like beginners do it, but if you know what you're doing, you know, I'm going to try making a guide about it later, maybe. We'll see how that goes. It really depends on what the user experience is with taking out the G10. If it ends up being like a big issue, then I'm going to extra discourage people and just be like, don't do it. But both Brandon and I have removed the G10, and while it was a pain, you can do it, and then you can do some really cool stuff with it. So, you know, there's your inbuilt warning, but also I think it's really cool. It's a cool possibility. So yeah, the G10 just adds a lot. This 3D also, it's surprising how nice this one little spot of G10 is. Like, you wouldn't think it would have that big of an effect, but when you're flipping, you sort of forget that that's where a lot of stuff happens. Like, as I do a short stop, or as I do oh Jesus, what is this called? How am I forgetting what this is called? This thing, you know, this thing right here that I cannot remember the freaking name of. That and or like short stops are great with this thing, because you can feel it. Like when I do this, you can feel that I'm literally gripping onto it, and you can feel that working. You can feel that it is actually giving you grip exactly where you want it, which is super cool. Also, I've done just like aerial to chaplains are just a dream on this thing. increasing the chaplain ability here was a huge point for me. And not only did we nail that, but because of the way that it does aerials very well, aerial to chaplains are just like, they just feel awesome. Okay, so that's the top part of the handle here. Down at the bottom, obviously, I still wanted to keep that jimping just because the jimping is iconic, and so I really wanted to leave that in there. The jimping is actually more effective now because of the new finish. That hand-done satin finish is just a way better texture for, flipping in general, and so it gives you a lot more grip down here. Not that the Vulp itself doesn't have great grip for doing ladders, because it actually does have very good grip for ladders because of how aggressive that jimping is. But this, as I said, it just kind of blows it out of the water in every way. So then you have this line that goes down to the end, and the end of the handle has a piece of hardware in it, and this is, for one, where having a T10 on both sides becomes very important, because this is a barrel in the end here. And, if it only had one T10 and you tightened it too much, you just genuinely would never be able to take that back out, and that would suck. So, because of what we've done here, you can get that back out if you have two T10s, or if you have the Glider Co. little bit holder. That thing is so nice for removing pivots like this. So that's nice and easy. Alongside that, this stainless steel pivot in the end actually creates a concentration of weight down at the end, but it's not an intense concentration of weight. It's not like adding the medium or heavy weights to the Serif, where you have like a lot of mass concentrated down there. Instead, it just adds, in my opinion, just enough weight. This is where talking about the Nibali's Trident comes in, because that's what inspired me to want a piece of hardware at the end of the handle. The Trident, I didn't love the way it flipped exactly, but when I flipped it, I felt something that I was like, oh, this is good in a way. Like, we could do something with this. It's not, like, this thing isn't what I want, but I could do something with it. Does that make any sense? So what I decided was, okay, I will go ahead and try, what if we put G10 on the Vulp? And originally, like, it was actually literally like, what if I, like, actually just put it on there, like the Trident or whatever, like if there was just a slab of G10 on it. But that didn't feel right. I didn't want it to be a Trident and or a Nautilus, obviously. I wanted it to be better than that. And so we, that's how we came to this, where I was like, okay, well, I want the inside G10. I want it integrated with the handle. I want it to be 3D, and I want that pivot at the end, because that adds a great amount of weight. And you can actually see, so here's an older prototype, and this is just barely older, and you can tell that it's older in two major ways. One of them being that there's no logo on it, so you have on the actual one, obviously, my logo and Nibali's logo, and there's no logo on the older prototype. But also, check this out. The orange is ever so slightly different, but I don't know if that's going to come across on camera. However, do you see this? That is, so we changed over, so I'll show you the original Vulp to compare here. The original Vulp had a cutout that was like literally just directly cut out by the machine. So it literally just has a spindle, just a tool bit that goes in there and then cuts it out exactly as you would expect. So you would literally lay it down on the machine sideways like this, and it goes in and cuts it out in one pass, and then you have a hole. However, what I wanted to do was use a keyway cutter. This is something that's used by all of the big players now. Squid Industries uses this for the Crack-A-Rackin'. Machine-Wise uses this for all sorts of stuff. A keyway cutter is super useful, and what you can see it does is instead of having that straight down sort of cutout, you have this beautiful curve that goes in there. And it's because what a keyway cutter is it's literally a wheel. And so instead of being a pointed thing that goes in there and then cuts out that area, it's a wheel and it goes in sideways. So you can do it while you're milling the top of the handle. You can do it while the handle's like facing this way. It has this wheel that goes in and goes and like removes the inside there. And so that's why you have that curve, is because the curve is the radius of the wheel. So that's pretty cool. But you can see here, from the older model to this model, this is how fine-tuned we were getting when it was coming to like the amount of flipping back and forth, like for balance and stuff. You can see the balance point, we had more material at the end here. That was much closer to like how much material we had on the original Vulp. But it just wasn't feeling exactly right while flipping. And this was actually Brandon that pointed this part out. He was like, I really think we should remove some of the material from there. And the way that he showed that to me was by removing the weights. It didn't flip like crazy better, but it flipped differently and was a little more light and lively in a way that we both really liked. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I want that to be the default out of the box feeling. So once again, thank you to Brandon for that feedback on this. That was very valuable because it ended up with us changing from, having it right there to having it moved down, honestly, a fair bit. Like that is a fair bit more aluminum that we're removing between these two versions. And yet it makes this newer version flip much, much nicer. Not that the old version didn't flip well at all. As a matter of fact, the old version was already one of my favorite trainers to flip. The only thing I noticed is that it was a little bit sluggish when I was doing stuff like this, right? And that is fixed in the newer version where it just kind of like is much more responsive. You can see it as I do this trick, right? You can see it going faster than I could with this older version, where this older version sort of like hangs up on some of these. And that's literally just that minor difference in weight. Another thing you can do is because the G10 is in there so securely, you can actually remove the end hardware and still flip it just fine. Because the G10 is integrated so specifically into all of these little nooks and cutouts, the stuff that's holding it on one end is generally enough to keep it in there. I wouldn't, take the hardware out and then like drop it a bunch, because then your G10 might break. But at least in general, you can do that, where you like get rid of these. I guess technically weights in the end. They are pivot hardware, but they're kind of weights. You can get rid of those and have a new experience where it's much, much lighter to flip. And I don't know if it'll be any good, but you could try it. It might be really good. I actually haven't done that yet. I should probably give that a try. Maybe I'll make an update video after I do that. Anywho, some other ideas that we had was one of the things I thought of originally was having like the end turn back into G10, and we decided against that partially because first of all, I just think that this, where it like turns into the circle, is really cool. Also, having the jimping be all aluminum is important. But the other thing too was that dropping it, if it turned back into G10, that could be a bit of an issue. So we decided to keep it aluminum on the bottom, so that if you drop it, you have a less chance of damaging the G10. There's still some chance that the G10 near the pivot area gets damaged. We'll have to see how that goes with time, but that's just kind of the nature of G10 Balisongs. You can see with my Wraith, it's actually held up extremely well, even though I have dropped it a number of times, and there's a similar amount of G10 on this in that area, so it should be fine, but that's just something to note. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know if any of this made sense to you. Let me know if there's any questions that you might have about the design process behind the Vulp Pro, or why I made any of the decisions I did, or how you might get into the process of designing a balisong of your own, because it's really fun. I really enjoyed making this product, and I'm really excited to release it to you all. Once again, December 6th on nabali's.com. It's $139 for all the different colors. They're all the same price, and yeah, I'm very happy about it. So yeah, let me know if you guys are excited for this thing. Let me know what you think of my design. And yeah, I'll be here. I'll be listening, watching, waiting excitedly for the drop. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the moment. I've got to come up with like a new thumbnail idea. So here's the original Vulp in the middle, right? And then we've got the new Vulps on the side. Is that the thumbnail? That feels like the thumbnail, right? Is that good? Does it need better lighting? Is that good? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if this is the thumbnail or not. If it's not the thumbnail, then I messed up. But if it is the thumbnail, wow, look at me go. I'm so smart. Thanks for watching. Bye.